Welcome, and thank you all so much for joining us for this special series of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. I am so pleased to be here. My name's Holly Amaya, special to the Crexi team for today, and this is the Women of Influence series. We are delivering next-level insights straight from GlobeSt's Women of Influence conference in Lake Tahoe. So I am so thrilled today to sit down with our guest, Carrie Bobb. I'm going to talk a little bit about Carrie and embarrass her with the riches of all of her accomplishments before we start talking. Carrie is a placemaker for mixed-use developments where she curates a sense of place and drives value vertically for an asset through retail leasing and merchandising. During her 2 decades plus career in commercial real estate, she has negotiated more than $2 billion in transactions, which I'm sure that number has probably gone way up since this bio was written, right?
Not significantly, but yeah, yes.
That's a huge number to be proud of. Prior to joining Foundry, Carrie was the founder of Carrie Bobb and Company and co-founder of Hello Jenny. Carrie Bobb and Company specialized in mixed-use developments and evoking emotion through retail leasing. Hello Jenny develops digital strategies for commercial real estate by aligning the social media strategy of an asset with the leasing strategy. Prior to starting her own companies, Carrie was with CBRE in San Diego, my hometown, for 15 years, where she worked on projects out of the ground like One Paseo, the Village at Pacific Highlands Ranch, Pacific Gate, Flower Hill Promenade, Encinitas Village, and several others. So it is so fabulous to have you here. I could go on and on about your accomplishments.
I love being here, and I love that you're in San Diego.
Yes, totally. We have so much to talk about San Diego and Nashville, where you are now. But first, tell us a little bit about your career path. Like, how did you get started in commercial real estate, and how did you get to where you are?
So my dad was a physician. He's since retired, and he had started investing in medical office buildings.
Okay.
And when I was in high school, he would tell me, you've got to get into commercial real estate. You've got to get into commercial real estate. And so I grew up in Phoenix.
Okay.
And was trying to get hired by CBRE and some of the larger firms. And we would vacation in San Diego all the time. And so it took me a year plus to get an internship or runnership at CBRE in the UTC office. And they had a wheel program at the time, which I love that concept. I think we should bring that back. More companies should do that. And what it was is you could rotate throughout different specialty types. And so CBRE in San Diego has so many great product types. You've got like golf course properties and hotel groups and life science and retail, office, like all senior housing. You have all sorts. You have the Mexico team that's doing all sorts of, like, it's just amazing. And so as a young person, I thought I wanted to get into medical office. And so you have an opportunity.
Because that's what you know, right?
Yeah.
Through your dad.
And anyway, so you would rotate every 6 months. Well, when I came on, I started in 2003. A retail team had just come over from Grubb & Ellis at the time, and they just needed help, like, organizing their boxes and files and things like that. And so I joined with them, and I really loved it. And I ended up never rotating out. That wasn't the smartest part. But I just fell in love with retail. And I think we were talking about like advice for young people before jumping on. And I think really loving the product type and loving the people that you work with is really important. And I genuinely love retail. And the best people, retail is always like the smallest product type.
Right.
And I don't actually give people advice to go into retail. It's changed a lot since I started. But if you love it, it's a cool product type in this industry.
So talk to me and talk to us a little bit about challenges, right? I mean, you've been at this a long time. What are some of the more significant challenges you feel you faced sort of coming up through the industry?
Well, it changes throughout your career, right? Like when you're younger, it's just even understanding what words mean in the business and like how the process works and things like that. And I was speaking at University of San Diego recently, and one of the students had asked, what does work-life balance look like? And I said, well, for you, when you're starting out, it's like first one in, last one out, because you have to soak in as much as you possibly can soak up in this industry. And you're working so hard to get to a place when you're in your 30s and 40s to set some boundaries and have some work-life balance and things like that. But so that would be a challenge when you're younger, is just kind of like figuring out who the players are, who you can trust, because you're going to get burned, and figuring out the game, because it's definitely a game. And then as you get older, the challenges get harder. And I had this misconception that once I get to this certain product type and this quality of an asset, like I've arrived and it's going to be really easy and it's going to be great and life is good. And you never really get there. Like the problems get a little bit more difficult. And then I have had some extreme challenges. If people kind of look up my story, that's a whole nother podcast. But I've had some pretty extreme dark days, and I basically just got blindsided and punched in the face in 2018 and had to take a step back.
Yeah.
And what that does is it causes you to transition and pivot. And that is both a blessing and a curse.
What helped you do that? Like what resources, what support were crucial for you to sort of execute on that pivot?
Without question, having faith is the root of everything. I feel like it's like an upside down pyramid, and everything else in your life hinges on the base of that. And for me, it's faith. It could be your North Star, whatever is truth, whatever you're standing on, that's truth. Because when you're by yourself and it is dark and you don't know which end is up, you have to have some element of like who you are in your core. For me, that was my faith. And so that was really important. And then having support of family and like a few really tight friends, people who can give you guidance when you really don't know what is up and what is down. Like your world is just rocked.
Right.
And so having good people that pour into you, and it doesn't need to be a lot. You could even just have one, but someone that's going to rally.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
And then the pandemic happened, right? So you were in the midst of this pivot. The pandemic happens. Nobody knows. I mean, obviously, I joke now. It's like we don't talk about those times anymore because the early days of 2020 were so crazy, right? Like nobody knew which end was up. How did that impact the pivot, or did it end up being a good thing for the pivot?
Well, good and bad. And
right.
I think that we're in crazy times right now, right?
Truly,
like, what
truly.
is going on in our world? So you got to be agile enough to read the room and be flexible, but steadfast on what you want. And that's a fine line.
Yeah.
So I had started my own brokerage company in 2019, and then I started a social media company, Hello Jenny.
Yes.
And then in 2023, sold Hello Jenny to Foundry Commercial.
Got it.
And that's in 2022, my husband and I moved our family to Nashville. So we had some things happening in our lives personally. We wanted to make the move before our kids got older.
Right.
And the pandemic was good for the social media company because everyone was leaning into digital.
Hard, right.
And so I feel like you can make money in the ups and the downs. You just have to figure it out.
You're looking for the pieces of opportunity, right?
Yes.
The pockets of opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are you kind of seeing out there in the market? I mean, you're truly a visionary, right? Having all of you've got, it sounds like lots of irons in different fires, which is great, right? The social media company, I mean, that's in and of itself had to have been such an undertaking to,
I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes.
Okay, like what? Would you feel comfortable sharing one or two?
Oh, there's so many. I can think of so many. One, accounting is really hard.
Yes. Yeah.
So just building the infrastructure of a company, I just learned a lot through that.
Yeah.
And then working with people. We have a lot of good people and had a lot of good people that have come and gone from our company, and learned a lot from every one of them.
So yeah, you've had these sort of like related but disparate ventures, right?
Yeah.
You've had this long career. You've done what you do now in multiple cities, right? And I understand you're still doing lots of work in California. You're based in Nashville, still doing lots of work in the South. Like what trends are you seeing? Like what do you have your eye on out there in the market generally for commercial real estate?
Capital is dictating everything.
Okay.
And so we're seeing a couple different things. On one of the panels today, one of the women was talking about the minimum wage in California, and that affects the rest of the country. I mean, California is kind of like the tip, and you can see what's coming in a lot of places. And so it's important for the rest of the country to understand how like the minimum wage going up on fast food,
right,
and how that impacts. We're seeing that in Nashville and how restaurants expand because the sit-down restaurants, now their dishwasher for a high-end Mexican restaurants, like one can go to Taco Bell and make more money. So
Right.
now everyone has to increase their labor costs, and then that limits how much they can grow in other markets.
Yeah.
And so that one little thing is having ripple effects throughout the whole country. We're seeing capital in that smaller businesses like coffee shops, for example, and TIs are getting a lot higher.
Yes.
And even if you give a sizable TI allowance, they don't have the capital to finish out the build out because they need their working capital. And so just the cost of capital is impacting a lot of things. So you have certain groups that are expanding and deals are taking longer.
Yeah.
I think once interest rates start to come down and we can get the movement going, it's not going to happen overnight. It's probably going to take a while to get this machine picking up pace a little bit more.
Right.
But that one of the women on that panel, I thought about this earlier when you were talking, is she had said the opportunity is optimism in our industry right now, because it is hard for everybody, all these small businesses and even some of these corporations with what's being put on them.
Yeah.
And trying to create opportunities that they can still show growth, that it's hard for the landlord and the tenant, but they're working together to
Right.
figure it out. And so, but you're in market and all the Sunbelt markets, everyone's doing great and there's a lot of deals and people are still out there looking. It's just taking a little bit longer and it's a little bit harder to put together.
Yeah. So I want to be super mindful of your time here at the conference because I know there's lunch happening, there's other panels that are happening. We want to make sure that you are fed and ready to move on to the rest of your day.
You've got a long list of people to interview. It's
Crexi
great.
is crushing it. Crexi is crushing it. So this is my last question for you. What advice would you give to young women who are entering this field? You've already given a ton, but I don't want to put words in your mouth by paraphrasing and recapping. So what are your thoughts on that?
The number one thing would be the people that you partner with or team up with are more important than the product type or the company or anything.
Okay.
You have to work with the right people who are good people who care about you, because you can have everything else, but if you don't have that one thing, it can upset everything.
And you know that in your gut, right?
Yeah.
Like trust your gut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carrie. Where can people find you online? I'm assuming there's many places because you've got your hands in lots of things. Where can people find you online if they want to stay in touch?
My social media is all just at Carrie Bobb,
Okay.
CarrieBobb.
Awesome. So great to see you. Thanks to everyone who tuned in today. If you enjoyed this episode, do not miss the next one. Visit Crexi.com/podcast. Sign up to get the next one delivered straight to your inbox. Thank you so much, Carrie.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.